But now I don't see those cobbles and curbs. I don't hear the blues anymore.
Rough Trade is giving away a third of the first 3 months of the Rough Trade Club plus new music membership exclusively to 101 Part-Time Jobs listeners. Become a member of Rough Trade Club New Music and you'll receive the Rough Trade Album of the Month straight to your door every month on exclusive vinyl pressing with exclusive bonus material. Club members have received exclusive pressings of albums from Sufjan Stevens, Sprints, The Last Dinner Party, Julie Byrne and Over Mono, just to name a few, this past year alone. Sign up using the promo code CLUB101POD and you'll get the Rough Trade Album of the Month, English Teacher's excellent debut album, This Could Be Texas, on exclusive Galaxy Gold for a third of the usual price. Here's English Teacher on a recent episode of 101.
How many opportunities do you get to write a debut album and have all of this, sport behind us? I don't know, I really like the idea of holding the bar as being like classic songs.
You only get one shot at a debut.
Don't want the album of the month but still want all the benefits? Sign up to the standard tier using Club 101 Pod and you'll still get the first month free. You'll also get free shipping on all orders, 10% off the bar and on secondhand vinyl in-store, and exclusive access to sold-out Rough Trade events. So don't hang around. Go to roughtrade.com/club and sign up with the code CLUB101POD. That's CLUB101POD and claim money off the album of the month, English Teachers This Could Be Texas, today. This offer's available to UK residents only. Do you play in bands? I did for the longest time. And I wish that I knew that DistroKid was a thing. I don't even think it existed back then. DistroKid makes music distribution fun and easy with unlimited uploads, and artists keep 100% of your royalties and earnings. 1 million plus artists rely on DistroKid to get their music on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, TikTok, Tidal, Instagram, and all the major streaming services. When you get DistroKid, you can see a DistroKid bank and withdraw your earnings. You get notified when you've earned royalties and you can withdraw via the app. And you can even check your streaming stats on Spotify and Apple. Get 30% off your first year on DistroKid by going to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod. 30% off for your first year. That's not bad. We know it's a tough world out there. Why don't you make it easier for yourself? And to get 30% off that free year as an artist, where you get 100% of your royalties and earnings, go to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod. All right, stay with me. I'll be right back after this.
You are about to participate in the most ambitious culinary experiment ever imagined.
This competition is going to test everything.
Adapt quickly to anything. I mean anything. The wildest day of your life starts right now.
All new 24 and 24, Last Chef Standing. Sunday night at 8 on Food Network. Stream on Max.
It's 101 Part-Time Jobs with me, Giles Biddett. It's where I speak to bands about how they make it work and everything they do to keep on going and not break up, which is what Cuffed Up has successfully done. They've just released their new record, All You Got, last Friday, and that's a theme of the record, to not get low after initial ups and downs of the band. Popularity, it's trends, it's surges. Sometimes you feel fucking cool, the next time you feel like a loser. That is what so many, if not all, musicians go through at one point or another. And this is the conversation that Ralph and Christina bring to the table this episode. Like I said, Cuffed Up's new record, All You Got, is out now. And that title, as we hear, is about just this, giving it all you got and not giving up. Cheers for listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs. If you enjoyed this chat, make sure you subscribe or leave a review on Apple if you like. I appreciate you, and I appreciate all the brilliant guests I have on here, week in, week out. Shout out to our sponsors, 2000 Trees, happening in Cheltenham, just a few hours away from London on the train. The Gaslight Anthem are headlining, Don Broco. The Chats from Australia, who are on Smoko constantly. Manchester Orchestra, Bob Villan, Creeper, Hot Mulligan, Hot Milk. Loads of ace bands playing at 2000 Trees this year. If you want to take yourself to Trees from the 10th to the 13th of July this year, head to 2000trees.co.uk and pick up your weekend ticket with 50 quid off the price using the voucher code 101pod. 2000trees.co.uk and the promo code 101pod gives you 50 quid off your weekend ticket. All right, here is Christina and Ralph from Cuffed Up. Their new album, All You Got, is out now. Here on 101 Part-Time Jobs. 101 Part-Time Jobs.
Yeah, so like similar to Ben from Bodega's comedy job in Times Square, I worked for Jimmy Kimmel, and I had to like stand outside on Hollywood Boulevard and like convince people to come for a taping when there's people that no one has ever heard of. Like, this person's from from this like daytime show or whatever. And so I would have to like coerce people, be like, hey, it's hot outside. Wouldn't it be cool if you could come inside to an air conditioned studio and see Jimmy Kimmel? And they're like, who? I was like, the Jimmy Kimmel. And they're like, Fallon? I was like, sure. Yeah, absolutely. You just come,
Jimmy Kimmel's huge though, right? Jimmy Kimmel's like, he's massive.
He's big now, but this was about 12 years ago. So I was like literally just, and it really depended on if there's people that wanted to see those like actors or the guests. So, and it was about like hit or miss about half the time. So, during the misses of the episodes, I would have to try to coerce people to come in.
I guess that's kind of good for being in a band. You get used to chatting to people who are like, fuck off. like you get to ask people to do stuff. You get to ask people for things.
Yeah, I mean that's really what you are in as a band half the time is you're having to ask people for things, or you're having to approach people, or you're talking to people at shows. You're at the merch booth, and people are approaching you, and so that taught me a lot. But I've held some of the most random jobs, mostly like music industry. I actually majority of my jobs were in music industry stuff. But like if I'm sure you've probably heard this before, but like music industry jobs pay fucking jack shit, even like less than minimum wage half the time. Like truthfully, like
and a lot of unpaid internships.
Oh yeah, that was almost exclusively all my jobs is unpaid internships. So I was there basically just, broke and just working these jobs so I could actually have some sort of foot in the door, like theoretically, although it didn't really do it about half the time. But it's like the relationships that you built there is kind of what it was. But and there's so many. I've held every single freaking job under the sun at that point, and just. And thankfully I have a stable job now that I really love, and I have a full-time career on that. But like for the longest time, I've been in bands for like 18 years or 17 years at this point. So it's like, I've worked through it all. My favorite job though was I was a poker dealer once. Damn. I was literally just doing private events.
Yeah. Hey, that's a good skill to have. Christina, were you friends with Ralph when he was doing this stuff? Could you go in and see him on the job?
No. Well, it's funny. Ralph and I, so we both grew up basically in Santa Barbara. We both went to high school in Santa Barbara, and we went to rival high schools though, so we never met each other. But my first job was in Santa Barbara at Crush Cakes. Ralph, I'm sure knows. Crush
that's
Cakes.
Right. Oh my god!
It's a very like iconic cupcake cupcake store in Santa Barbara. Great job. I got to eat. I'm a huge like sugar fanatic,
Yeah.
fiend, and so I got to eat all the like day old cupcakes.
Yeah. Waste not, want not.
Yeah, if the donation place like didn't come through that day, I got to just and I would have cupcakes to give people, and very, very nice. Like, well, it wasn't my first job, but it was my first job that was not like a high school, a little bit outside of high school. There's so many skill levels that you need to be an artist now that are not purely knowing how to write a song and knowing how to perform.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, you just have to make those decisions of like, do I learn all of this stuff, or do I try to find the person who knows everything already and get them to help me? It's like, do I make my own content and posters and album art and everything? And it's like, I think, sure, everybody's maybe capable of that. Not everybody's capable of that, but everybody's capable of taking the time to learn. It's just, that's so much time, and it's so much unpaid time that goes into when you finally get paid to do something in music. So, time is the biggest commodity.
It makes me think how experience in playing music is one of the biggest things, and experience is at odds with the industry being a kind of young person's game. But I think the music industry is becoming a less and less young person's game, because I think people are sussing out, like, if you have that person helping you, or if you've got that funding for a limited period of time, it will run out. But if it's a teach a person to fish, kind of scenario. And it seems like I'm seeing more and more like bands and artists who, they're not 17. They're late 20s and their late 30s and their late 40s. People like creating their own kind of sustainable future for themselves by learning how to do it all themselves.
Yeah, I mean, that's why, like, if you see, like, Idols, Mark Bowen's like co-producing everything. Even if you think of like the 1975 with like, the drummer producing everything. It's like when you have the capability of like teaching yourself how to get your vision out into the world instead of depending on some producer, which sometimes some bands do need that, especially when they don't have, the guile to be able to like even try to learn anything. I understand that, but like we're in a day and age right now where being an independent musician and being especially in a band is so fucking difficult. It's like, it's the most difficult. It's like, in a lot of ways, it's like, you have the most opportunity because no one's saying like you can't put out music. You could put out music, you could create your own audience, you could build a relationship with that audience that's special. But at the same time, financially it is so expensive to tour. It's so expensive to actually, do like the other half of like what it takes to be in a band. But this front half, it's so malleable if you're able to, I've done this my entire life, and what Christina's talking about is basically my life. When I was 16, someone, they were like, well, you need to record at a studio. I was like, but I don't even know where any studios are in Santa Barbara. Like there's there's one studio in Ventura that we had to drive all the way to once, and I was like, and we did it, and it was so shitty. And I was like,
lots of money.
It was a lot of money. Yeah, we spent all that money, and then they didn't even do much, and we only got a couple passes, and so like I think about that all the time. Where I'm like, wow, we're so lucky right now that I could spend, I can invest in an Apollo twin, which is like on every single fucking record that's out right now. Everyone uses an Apollo.
What's that? Is that a guitar amp, like interface?
It's an interface, yeah, and it's like a really clean interface with a really good, with like basically like it's a really quality interface, and you could get like really quality sounds out of it. So if you have that at home, why not dive into teaching yourself? It's going to take hours. Like I joke around, it took 100 hours of learning and failing and stuff. But like, if you get over that hump, that it opens up so much where, like Christina said, I know how to produce now. Like, we theoretically don't need a producer. Maybe a producer in the studio could be helpful, or some engineers and stuff. Maybe if we eventually get to the point where we could rent a studio, go track some live stuff, some drums and stuff that we need. But like, I love the capability. Most of the record, like there's some times where I'm like listening on AirPods, because you got to check on AirPods for mixes nowadays. AirPods. And I'm walking around, I was like, oh my god, that vocal part didn't really land for me. My microphone is set up right here, so I'd pop in and then just track it like willy-nilly, and then I'll get like a really comfortable, awesome performance out of it, because I'm comfortable at home, you know, and I could pull it off, versus like having to be like, today is vocal day. We're in the studio, we're spending thousands of dollars, and you only have today to do it, and fuck all if you can't get it. And it's like
I remember, so I lived in Santa Barbara, and I went to college in Boston, and I'd come home for the summer, and I'd go with my dad to LA to play open mics and stuff. And so I met some people, some industry people, and that were mostly like nice people, not necessarily trying to take advantage of me, but they were like, we want to produce you, we want to record your songs. This is how much money we would need to do that. And I never went through with any of that, because it seemed like such a gamble. And when I finally did record my first album, I recorded it with a family friend of mine who's also an incredible musician, and very experienced and everything, but he was also a friend. So he was like, yeah, you need to demo your songs first. You need to arrange your songs and know how you want them to sound before we start doing this. That's not something that we're going to figure out as we go. And it's better for you to explore that on your own before doing that. And so I was lucky that he kind of mentored me through that first process, and I learned so much by doing that. And so, yeah, that's definitely also another benefit, is just having that space and time to practice it, and just a little more breathing room versus like trying to do things when you got studio time, and like you gotta get out of there and at a certain point, and it's when that pressure is gone. And I remember we were doing had another discussion yesterday as a band, and Joe was talking about tracking drums, and how like the first day that you guys were tracking drums, like just you couldn't, it was like difficult to get everything right. Yeah, there's so much, there were technical issues, but and it just like became a wash. And it's like, well, at least that was at least that was in like Joe's apartment, and not again like a studio space that you guys had rented out. So so ultimately I think it's great, but it's like taking the time to learn how to do those things.
101 part-time jobs, 101 part-time jobs.
Anything I've ever learned in music is because I did it wrong, completely wrong. I had to learn the hard way, especially with performance things. It's like, my guitar, like, I broke a string. I need to have a backup because I don't have time to change strings for a half-hour set. My battery was dead, or like I needed backup cables. Everything, all those little things, I learned by performing so many times. But I think with like young people, in terms of being successful, period, I guess I would think, because I didn't have this when I was young, and I think I have it a little more now that I'm older, and I think that's natural. But it's like not having a fear of failure, like actually going into things hoping that you fail so you can learn something. That's a very mature approach that I think some very special young people have, but most people have to have life experience and fail and realize that you didn't like die after to know that's actually something to seek out so you can learn rather than something to avoid. And I just think it's really rare to be young and have that sort of mentality.
For real.
Yeah, you know what's crazy is that I think that I'm definitely that weird unicorn of a person, because failure is only now I think about failure, you know, when I consider certain things. But when I was young, I didn't think about any of that stuff. I literally was like, okay, I want to do this. I have no connections. I'm Filipino. I look like this. There's no one else that looks like me in the industry. I'm always the youngest person in the room. I'm always the only brown person in the fucking room. Like, how do I get to how do I get everyone to see me as an equal, A, and then B, like, how do I actually like get the opportunities that like a lot of my counterparts like I'll get? And it's really like it's that fearlessness. I say it's like the Gryffindor like leap without looking, you know, kind of like thing, but you're like you kind of just have to leap without looking, leap without looking, and then like just trying your best, and you're like the cat in the fucking meme where you're just reaching for the ledge, you know, because anything worth doing, including my, like, you know, 17, 18 years in the music industry, of which half of my career was like working for free and just like just to be there and like working my butt off and trying to learn every single aspect of the industry. Like all of that is because I didn't have any fear of failing, even though when I would like face fear at some point, like, you know, I used it as a way to fuel myself to double down. This whole record, this is what All You Got. The record is exactly about that though too. Is that us as a band, we were at a really kind of dark place where, you know, like our lineup was changing. We lost our manager, we lost our agent, we weren't going back to our label, who kind of like truthfully like didn't do a great job with our release, and we were stuck. And we're like, what the fuck do we do? And we've been wanting to put this, you know, work on a record, but like we're going on this tour, and like there's all this stuff, but you know, it was the same mentality. Failure wasn't an option. It was like failure was going to be the motivation, and that's why this whole record is called All You Got. Is literally we came back, we put all we got, we put it all into the damn record, so we could show everyone that we could do this, and that, you know, we're not a dead band, and we weren't going to be another casualty in the whole, you know, sad list of bands that have become casualties, because it's, you know, so easy for a band to fail. It's like, no, we're not gonna give up on this, and we're gonna prove everyone wrong by writing a record that talks about that, but also teaching ourselves how to do everything. We're a self-managed, self-made, self-produced band, you know.
Yeah, awesome. There's a correlation between doing cool stuff and not being afraid to fail, and not having like an ego, and not having this kind of pride. You know, I think we grew up thinking that ego and pride is, you know, maybe that'll keep you out of trouble at school, for example. But it's kind of like, fucking who cares? You're going to do some cool stuff. I mean, the best advice ever is that no one fucking cares. And then you have complete freedom, or you're working towards complete freedom. Yeah,
no, it's true. That it honestly, like, it only people pay attention really is yourself. Like, that's all that matters at this point. I try to remind our band, I try to remind all the artists I work with, I that like, it doesn't fucking matter what anyone thinks. It really doesn't matter. Like, it's a thought that exists in their head for a split second, if that. Like, it really, like, it's your career on the line. I've been kind of empowering like other bands about this too. I just dealt with something. We're putting together a tour and dealing with, like, you know, support and trying to get people to, you know, commit to like to our lineups and stuff. And sometimes you know, we deal with like, oh yeah, it wasn't my decision, you know, our team, our management, blah blah blah. I was like,
this is promoters that you're talking about, or other bands?
I'm talking about other bands who have managers, right? And I'm like, hey, no offense, but it's not their fucking career. It's
Yeah.
your career.
Yeah.
Did you want to play this? Were you excited about this? Is this something that you want to do? You have to look inside yourself at some point and be like, well, they have an agenda. They're doing their best. They have an agenda, but they have an agenda as much as you want to call them their friends because they're your managers. But like, you also have to be able to say like, we are the business. I am the business. We are final say. We have the power. You cannot give the power to your team or your management because ultimately they could go fucking sign someone else the next day. Literally, I've seen it. I've seen it so easy. Like, and by the afternoon, you don't have a fucking team, and then suddenly they're on to the next fucking, like bands that are doing well or whatever, and then you're stuck here in the hole because you trusted them at that point. Like, sometimes you just got to go with your own gut.
That power dynamic is mad because as a band, emerging band, you think, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we had that booking agent? Wouldn't it be cool if we had that manager, that label? And so you're working towards those people. You're swimming towards those people. And then when you're in that scenario and you are working with them, you're like, fuck, well, obviously you want to have respect for someone, but you don't want to work for them. You want to work for yourself. And that, like, who's the boss? I don't think people really ever fully know. I think you just got to be really lucky to work with people where you have the same vision. I feel like it comes down to, do you have the same goals?
Yeah, no, truthfully, that is it. And we even like, at some point we were working with an agent who is like a big time agent, has like these artists that we love. We're like, oh, cool. Like, fucking, this is the golden ticket, of which, like, there's no such thing as a golden ticket. That's like, it's not.
Doesn't exist.
We were just like, oh, this is going to change things and stuff. Like, it didn't change things. Like, it was even more difficult because there was so much competition within, like, trying to submit for tours or like doing all this stuff. And then eventually when he decided to let us go, like, we were in a bad space with him anyway, where I was like, I don't know if they're doing anything right. Like, I felt like the wrong fit. The same thing you're talking about. Like, I felt like the wrong fit. His excuse to us was like, started talking about like numbers, started talking about like, well, you guys aren't, he literally, his words verbatim was, you guys used to be hot and now you're not. I'm like, well, first off, that's some fucking bullshit, like Rock Doc Chapter 3 bullshit. And then he says, and then he goes, and then the worst part is that he goes like, okay, pull up Stereogum. I'm like, great. And then pull up Stereogum. And he's like, okay, and he starts reading off these band names of people who are getting covered, including some bands that we were friends with. And he's like, is it fair that like they're on Stereogum, but they don't have an agent, but you guys have an agent? And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? That makes no fucking sense. Just accept the fact that like we're not a good fit together, and like let's talk about this like human beings, and then we're not a good fit together. And so all that to say, like, there's no offense to him or any of the people we worked with in the past, because they are genuinely good people. It's just when they're the wrong fit, and just like a relationship, you have to know when it's the wrong fit. And in this case, like, the best thing for us is that we could actually focus on ourselves and like invest in ourselves and learn from our mistakes, learn from what we're doing now, and like figure out like how to do this on our own for now. And there's no shame about that, because in this day and age, you can't rush things and just choose a manager because they like you. It's like you have to choose the right fit.
All of this stuff is like a lot. It's a lot of brain power. It's a lot of energy. It's a lot of time. And like, meanwhile, you've got to live your own lives. Like, you've got to pay rent, and you've got to like make sure you do that thing that you need to do that keeps you happy. How do you feel like, I mean, you both seem like very balanced people who have played music for a while, and you've learned so much, and you kind of, you've got a grip, you've got a handle on it. Does it feel like you both have a handle on it? And what are like the core things that like keep you, what are like the main pillars of being able to play music and have, a balanced life now?
I love, it's like, do you think you have a handle on it? I was like, some days I'm like, wow, I am crushing this. Yeah. And some days I'm like, okay, I'm going to give it till the end of the year. and then I'm gonna leave. I can't tell you. It's just every day that for me. So in terms of what I do, and I've been very lucky because I studied music in college, so I have a degree in music, and that made teaching a pretty easy transition for me to make. So I teach music. I'm lucky that I have a lot of daytime hours, and then evening, in the afternoon, late afternoon to early evening, I'm teaching pretty much every day. I occasionally teach preschool music. So I will, have a rock show with Cuffed Up one night, and the next morning at 9 a.m., I'm in a room with 3 and 4-year-olds shaking tambourines. Really? Yeah. And talk about ego, talk about really keeping your ego in check. Although they in some ways they're the toughest audience. In other ways, they're really an ego boost for me. I mean, I walk in there and they're like, wow, you look so pretty today, Miss Christina, and I just feel like $1,000,000. But sometimes they're like, this song is boring. They just say it out loud to me. And and then the other thing that I do is I do a lot of like private event gigs. And so, growing up in Santa Barbara, I played a lot of wineries and breweries and things like that. But I've also played weddings. This weekend, I played a 4-year-old's cowboy birthday party.
Sure.
I get paid pretty well for that. With not, I guess it takes maybe a certain type of musician. I think certain musicians are very precious about their music, and it has to be done in the way that they want to have full control over. They don't want to be seen in a certain light musically that doesn't match their personal vision of their artistry. But for me, it's a skill that I'm working at. I don't have many other skills, truly. I mean, I'm a pretty on top of it gal. I've done some little admin things for people where I answer emails and stuff like that, basic types of things. But mostly music is my skill, so I'm going to use it in any way I can. Yeah. And honestly, sometimes I have an amazing show where I feel great. Sometimes I do a show, and not just with Cuffed Up. I do solo work, and I'm in another band as well. So that's, a lot of my time too is rehearsals. There's time where I'm working all day. I'm working, there was a period where I worked, from 9 to 5, and then I'd go to rehearsal from 6 to 9. And that was most of my days during the week. That's mad. Even Monday through Saturday. So I had to take away a couple of the morning things that I was doing just so that I could have some space in my mind.
It's a real reminder that you're working, when you're involved in different projects, and then, I'll get the Cuffed Up record. And to me, it's a record is, it's a complete thing. These kinds of conversations is a reminder that, it takes a number of different people to work their own parts towards a single vision. A single vision is made up of individuals.
Yeah. And again, individuals willing to give their time to something.
Yeah. Hey, this has been great. Thanks so much, Christina. Thanks so much, Ralph. Great band. Looking forward to the record coming out. You're doing a record, like a listening party this Thursday, aren't you?
Yeah. We're doing it on Bandcamp. We're just going to play through the record. We'll be there chatting it up.
Awesome. Well, I'll try and release this either on Thursday or Friday. But hey, I like to end these episodes asking the biggest work gaffe or biggest work mistake that you've made. You know, I think it's, you know, talking about, you know, I love what you said, Christina, about like going into, I think, was it Ralph? We said, you know, I will going into a scenario where you want to make a mistake because at least you'll leave knowing more than you did. You know, if you go in and do something just the way they wanted you to, you don't actually learn anything from that. So, you know, being able talking about lack of ego, stripping away your ego, keeping it in check. Do you have a memory, Christina? You've got one.
Well, oh no, I played a private event recently that I was playing outside in a kind of a small mall, like an outdoor mall. I was playing in front of a storefront, and I do gear checks before I leave for the event, like because I have to bring my PA, speaker, whatever, I have to bring everything, and I'm always paranoid that I'm gonna forget something, especially if I travel a long distance. And it was on the other side of LA, so it's like an hour drive to this other spot in LA where I was performing, and I opened my trunk and my amp is not there. Like my speaker system is not there. And so what I did was I plugged in my microphone, but I wrapped it around my mic stand so that it looked like it was going somewhere, but it actually wasn't plugged into anything. And I feel like I tricked people maybe. And then I lowered the key of all of my songs so that I was actually like shouting them instead of singing into the microphone, because
so you played acoustic
would travel. So I played fully acoustic, like busking essentially, instead of electric, but just really loud for like 2 hours. And it seemed to be okay, but I was very embarrassed that I had forgotten that.
Hey, good on you for going through it. That's gumption. That's elbow grease.
Thank you. Yeah, it didn't seem to affect too much, but I was really embarrassed. That's like my nightmare. That's my nightmare come true. Yeah.
Well, mine's more admin related, so I think this is covering some ground. I used to, when I was first an intern, I was at Red Light Management, where I eventually like became the head of the internship department, and then I was working, with other managers and stuff. But at this point, I was an intern, and at that point, they were giving interns like email addresses for sending stuff out and whatever. But I was trying to get on tours. I used to do merchandise for like bands and stuff. So I've been on tour, like on the Vans Warped Tour, or like I was on tour with like Radiohead, or like some other people. Like I would just go on tour, and so I sent an email. I crafted an email. I sent it to one manager, but what I didn't know was that I accidentally sent it to everyone in the entire company. Literally up to Core and Capshot, the Dave Matthews Band manager who owns half of North Carolina, and then like a big chunk of this company. And immediately, like clockwork, I just see my friend Chris walking towards me, and he's like, "Get in here!" And I'm like, "Fuck!" And he throws me into the office. He's like, "Ralph, you can't be doing that." I was like, "What are you talking about? I just like emailed Chaz about like a touring opportunity, blah, blah, blah." And he's like, "No, it's sent to everyone." I was like, "Oh,
you replied,
yeah, Corin like you sent me an email and said, 'What the fuck is this?'" I was like, "Oh God!" And so afterwards, they stripped away all interns to have emails. So I was like, "Fuck, oh man!" And then ironically, years later, I came back to the company where I was the front desk person, and I ran the internship program. And so the same document, NDA documents that they had people signing and the reason why they didn't have emails was because of me. So I was like, ironically, put in charge of the same program where I fucked up.
That's brilliant. Hey, what's that Miles Davis quote? There's no such thing as a wrong note. It's the note you play next. Something like that.
Exactly.
What did you do? What could you do? I guess you say sorry, guys. put a.
All right.
put a
Ultimately,
meaning there.
no one cared. They're just kind of teaching me a lesson, just like to not do that stuff. But still, like I fucked up enough where it changed the actual like policy within the company. So I think that.
Hey, some people would say that's quite a feat. You left there and you changed
made
the
an
place.
impact. You made an
I
impact.
left my mark on the company. But still proud of it. And then I did a good job running the internship program. So I think I made it.
Awesome. Hey, Ralph and Christina, thanks so much. We're so looking forward to the record.
Thank you.
Buzzing for it.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
so much for having us. This
Of
is
course.
brilliant.
So there was Ralph and Christina from Cuffed Up here on 101 Part-Time Jobs. Great band. Good to hear them opening up. Good to hear those stories. I love doing this. I love finding out about bands I necessarily didn't maybe know before. And I think that's what we do together. There will be shows all the time on the show that you haven't heard of, and hopefully you go find something in it. So cheers for being here. If you play in a band or if you're an artist and you want to put out your own records and see it and get it up on Spotify, Apple, TikTok, Instagram, and get paid for it, you can use DistroKid. Head to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod to get 30% off your first year at DistroKid. You'll be making all your own money and you'll be making your own record label. I think that's the dream. Head to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod and join over 1 million artists who are using DistroKid. It's easy to use. I've used it in the past. It's fun to use. It's simple, and fucking life needs to be more simple sometimes, and DistroKid makes being in a band simple. So head to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod to get 30% off your first year there.
101 Part-Time Jobs is hosted by Giles Bidder and produced by me, Olivia Swash. This has been a Mighty Moon Media production.